What's the most bizarre experience you've ever shared with a stranger? I was at a movie theater a while ago, and while my friend was out getting popcorn, I sneezed at the exact same time as the guy next to me. No one else in the theater noticed, but we knew. This must happen to me before I die. I was at a store getting some groceries and went to grab an onion. All of the onions were huge, like 6 to 8 inches in diameter. I chuckled a bit and just kept looking at the onions. Another woman walked up and said, "These are huge onions." I agreed and started laughing. She started laughing. We both just stood there looking and laughing at the huge onions. This went on for a couple minutes until we each took one, nodded at each other, and went on our way. Met another girl at the airport and we became BFFs for 20 hours while flying from California to the Midwest. We were casually complaining to each other about our connecting flight being delayed 2 hours, then eventually found out we were seated right next to each other on both flights. When we finally flew to the second airport for the destination flight, we found out it was cancelled, so we went through all the hassle of rebooking together. We watched each other's luggage, negotiated to switch airlines together. We had each other's backs, man. Then we spent about 13 hours in the airport watching Disney movies on Netflix together and eating fast food and candy. Then after our last flight we said goodbye and never communicated again. Single serving friend. I live in Texas and a few of our parks have some great cave systems. I was with a group of friends and I stupidly decided to go off on my own route. I jumped off of a small ledge into a semi-large clearing. There was a random guy sitting there eating a sandwich. We spoke for a few minutes, then I asked, "So how do we get out of here?" This guy, in the most calm tone in the world, says, "I've been here for an hour trying to figure that out." So I decided to eat lunch. After about 30 we found a way out, but let me be clear, I thought I was going to die with this fool. I was flying into the old Hong Kong airport. You used to fly straight through the buildings and land suddenly at the airport, just basically thrown into the middle of the city. Now, it was pouring rain, the plane was drifting back and forth. I look out the window and I can see window lights through the rain and they seem higher than the plane. The plane is bucking up and down. I'm terrified. People are shouting every time the plane jumps. The guy next to me, who slept the first leg of the flight and drank for the second leg, was wearing a pilot's uniform. Lufthansa, I think. He was German, I'm pretty sure. He squints out the window, finishes the drink, and winks at me, smiling. English, American, Erp. The plane lurches again. I tell you a secret about this run. Okay. He looks around as if people might hear him, then whispers, "I always fail this in the simulator." He laughed a bunch, chewed on his ice and hummed to himself as we landed. I got my butt slapped by a gay guy who thought I was his boyfriend at checkout. Some dude in the public library was listening to obscene, moaning sounds, and the dude next to him was taking a test online. We just had a look at each other that understood the level of awkwardness and cringiness of our current situation. Mutual human understanding, which in its own way is kinda bizarre. I walked up behind my buddy Vince at the mall, and I got real close to his ear and whispered, "Wanna slap my titties around?" It wasn't Vince. I was riding the Tower of Terror ride in Orlando on a school trip. I was seated next to a very large and intimidating black gentleman. Once the drop started, he screamed like a little girl and grabbed my hand and held tight. Afterwards, we made eye contact and gave each other the man nod of understanding. What a beautiful and heartfelt story. Left the party at the same time as this girl, and as we weren't in the best of neighborhoods we unspokenly stayed within a few steps of each other. And when a group of guys walked around the corner and started hollering at her, we both went for each other's hand and pretended to be dating. The part that still makes me crack the frick up is that while we were about half a block past them, one of them yelled, "Just 'cause you find like Lois don't mean you got a frick, Peter Griffin." Definitely hadn't heard that one before, but we just kept holding hands till I dropped her off at her building. I was studying in the library late at night my freshman year of college. Living in the dorms, I ate mostly beans and rice, which led to an abundance of the toots. The room I was in was empty, so I let out a quick fart. Unfortunately, the room was not empty. There was one guy, pretty cute, actually, on the other side of the room, who who clearly heard me and was trying to stifle some maniacal giggles. I was too embarrassed to say anything, so I just ignored him. About 20 minutes later, I hear a small too-wee-eyed from his side of the room. He had a small smirk on his face but didn't say anything. A little while later he gets up to leave and says have a great weekend before leaving. Never saw him again. Every now and then I wonder how my fart buddy is doing and how he tells the story. Ah, young love. I used to work at a hotel and one day I was chatting with a guest. He mentioned he used to be a paramedic many years ago. He started telling me about a really tragic car accident he responded to where 2 children were killed. Said it was obviously something he would never forget. I mentioned to him that I was involved in a car accident many years ago and both of my sisters died, but that it happened in a different province. He immediately asked me if it was a particular city in the next province over which it was. He even remembered what part of the city it was. My mind was blown that almost 20 years later I would meet one of the people who responded to the car accident I was in. I was stopped at some lights on my bike, and a pedestrian walked up next to me to also wait at the lights. Just as they were about to go green, a car pulled up, and in the 1 second it was stopped in front of both of us. We both glanced in the window to see a teddy bear seat belted into the passenger seat, with a fully grown adult man driving. The light went green, the car burned off, we looked at each other, and I said, I'm glad somebody else was around to see that. Maybe he just wanted to get into the carpool lane. My favorite is when I flew to a meet and greet for grad school I had applied to. It was February, snowing, and they kept cancelling flight after flight. Come midnight they tell all of us, only about 6-7 people, that the next flight out was Sunday. It was Friday, the meeting was Saturday. That wasn't gonna hack it, and I wasn't the only one upset. Together we rented a van and drove to the destination about 4 hours away, through a half blizzard, at an average speed of 90 miles per hour. The woman who volunteered to drive was missing her daughter's 13th birthday, and was gonna be damned if she was a minute later. We all talked, shared stories, until we were all gassed, but since one of us couldn't sleep it was tacitly agreed, without ever making mention of it, none of us would sleep. And from that experience, I met a guy in my same department, who is still one of my close friends. At least once a year we bring up how strange and intense an experience that was. Walking hungover to Grand Central Station from our buddy's apartment one morning, my friend and I weren't paying much attention. Out of nowhere, we hear incensed mumbling from behind us, and quick footsteps. Suddenly next to us too, this black guy is rifling through a wad of money and is saying out loud, I had to rob him. B wouldn't let me on the bus. Nothing I could do. Just had to do it. Had to rob him. B gave me no choice. He's matching our walking speed, just right next to us. No longer going quick. He then turns to us and says, just had to rob him. You know how B are, my friend says back. Right. Frickin' B, man. The guy nodded approval, and finally walked past us. When a seemingly crazy person asks you for a confirmation, you casually back them up, whatever it is. Sitting at a long stoplight, and another car pulls up next to me. Not much else going on, so we share the awkward tension of looking particularly interested in the rogue threads of the steering wheel, fiddling with the aircon, or slightly bobbing our heads to the non-existent radio beat. A pigeon falls out of the sky in the middle of the intersection, which immediately grabs both of our attention. Almost a welcome distraction, the pigeon looks a little bit ruffled and confused, like a drunk guy in a moment of clarity. He takes a few steps in one direction, then dongs his head and walks the other way. Captivated by this weird episode, we didn't notice the car zooming into the intersection. Neither did the pigeon. At the last second, he got all flustered and spread his wings to fly away. Thwop, he bounced like a dog toy from the car's grill down under the car. He was lost from sight for a moment, which was the point that if this were a movie, the music would have stopped and a breathless moment before either cries of hallelujah or horror would play. Relief there was the pigeon, still, drunk looking, and a few feathers down. He continued as if nothing had happened, confusedly trying to decide which direction would lead him to the most happiness. Rinse, repeat, and, by that, I mean that another car came by, and the event repeated itself. Thwop, the only difference was that this time, Mr. Pigeon seemed a little bit more prepared and able to get away, so he seemingly rolled up the hood of the car, and along the side. He landed, feathers askew, and walked toward his car nemesis, and thus out of the intersection. The light turned green, and it was still just my car and the guy next to me. And even though the light turned green, we turned and looked at each other with a "what the frick did I just see" expression. After about 10 seconds, an eternity in stoplight years, I pressed the gas and moved on. I've thought about this event at least 4 or 5 times since it happened about 8 years ago. I wonder if the other guy remembers. This was an emotional roller coaster. I lived in vanilla white bread Marin County and there was nothing for fried chicken. If I had to go to Oakland Airport, I'd drive a couple miles in the wrong direction and grab me some Church's chicken. This place had bulletproof glass between the dining area and the cashiers. Remember, it's nowhere near my usual day-to-day life. On my 3rd visit in a 2-year time span, the guy at the counter, honest to God, said, "Oh, I remember you, you're that white guy who come in here," and he remembered my order. I was waiting for a friend to give him a ride to class, and as I waited, some dude got in my car and stared at me. I stared at him and we were locked in a cold stare for a good 10 seconds before he got out and I continued waiting for my friend. This happened like a month ago. I was sitting at a Jack in the Box munching on some cheap tacos when this lady sits down next to me and starts chatting. I've been asked for change quite a few times outside the specific Jack in the Box, so I'm only sorta listening, trying to figure out what this lady wants from me. It turns out she was a stripper who was supposed to drive her stripper friend home after her friend got a boob job, but for some reason her friend was unable to get the procedure done at the time, so she stormed off, leaving the stripper I was talking to behind. It was monsooning outside, so she took shelter in the Jack in the Box. I eventually ask if she wants a ride or change for the bus, and she replies with, "I just want to preach to you," and she pulls out this super worn Bible and starts reading passages and discussing forgiveness, an apt topic for her situation. I'm not sure if she was a stripper during the week and a Sunday school teacher during the weekend, but she was rather good at teaching the Bible. After like 10 minutes of lecturing, her stripper friend rolls up and honks, and she thanks me for taking the time to listen to her. Of course, her stripper name was Faith. This man was very interesting. I was in a small restaurant at midnight. These dudes, Jamaican looking, walked in, looked around and just kinda stared at me. After they ordered their food, they sit right freaking next to me. There were plenty of open tables, so I was weirded out and a bit worried. One of them says I was the only one who gave him a smile when he walked, and then he freaking starts stroking my beard. I was so close to slapping his hands out of my face. I don't know why I didn't, honestly. They start talking to me about life, like if I go to school, what I like to do, hobbies, family, crap like that. After talking with them for about half an hour, I realized that they're actually pretty cool people. They had some crazy life stories about traveling all over the US. It's about 1 AM now and they invite me to their place. I like to live that YOLO lifestyle and took him up on the offer. I get there and their place is filled with the most random and coolest art pieces and paintings. One guy goes to bed and the other guy tells me some history behind a few pieces, then says he wants to give me a tarot card reading. Frick it, what else are we gonna do? Long story short, he discovers how I'm feeling about life and my inner thoughts about what I want to do and how my current situation is affecting me. He told me I had to move away, something I had been planning to do for a while. I felt really connected with him and he had a sincere tone to his voice when he told me, like he was with me on my decision and that I was making the right choice. He then brought out a basket full of rocks and crystals he collected from all over the world. After digging through them, one of the crystals grabbed my attention. It was really pretty and made me feel relaxed when I held it. He told me he figured I would pick that one and let me keep it. He said it will give me peace and protect me when I need it most. He put some French movie on and we just discussed the movie while it was playing, like critiquing and saying what we liked about it. It was about 6 in the morning when I left, the sun just starting to come up. I thought a lot about what happened on the drive home, and 8 months later I moved away from all of my friends and family to go after my dream. I don't think I would have worked as hard to get there if it weren't for that man. One time a complete stranger, who was black, walked up to me downtown and loudly said, "Hey whitey, what's it like to be white?" I replied, "I'm sure it's pretty much the same. We go to work and we eat food and we try to sleep with women." "You're right about that," he said, then walked off. End of the story. Walking in a shady part of San Francisco one day, a crazy looking black woman walked up to me, got right in my face, and said, "Hey B, I like your shirt." Also unexpectedly pleasant. I was on a cruise in Alaska and I got talking to this woman. She asked where I was from and I told her Cleveland area, and she responded that she had a cousin who lived in a suburb of Cleveland. I asked which one and her cousin ended up living down the street from me, and I knew her and her family. I used to frequent a LAN center on weekends just fricking around with a friend playing CS and whatnot. Anyways, one night we got there and a majority of the computers are full, so my friend goes off to find one and I sit at one next to a normal enough looking guy. Oh, how wrong I was. I had been playing a while when I glance over to see what this guy is up to. To my horror, he is watching some of the raunchiest bestiality I've seen since my smut directorial days. Soon his phone rings. He answers and it's apparent it's his girlfriend. As he starts talking, he tells her that he's busy with some work stuff and he'll be home soon. Goes on to talk about how much he misses her, loves her, etc. All while watching a young lady pleasure a horse with her oral skills. He hangs up soon and I'm entranced by the gall it takes to so casually browse bestiality in a public place frequented by young teens. I guess he became bored with the equine BJ, so he starts searching for more and I can make out his Google entries from the corner of my eye. Incest bestiality was his chosen search phrase, and to this day I still wonder if he wanted to see animals who are related getting fricked by humans or humans who are related fricking animals. I'm sure that thought will eventually lead to an aneurysm. Finally he gets up to go to the bathroom and jerk off probably, and I make eye contact with the person sitting on the other side of him. I'm sure he had seen most or all of what I did too, because he gives me this horrified and confused look trying to process what the frick we just saw. The guy comes back, gathers his stuff and leaves. We're both left completely dumbfounded. I just went back to browsing my Guro furry hentai and thanked God I don't have any strange fetishes. Weird freaking people, man. You have been visited by the doggo of dandy rides. Like this video and have a dandy day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.